Hey, I'm Micah. So you'll have to forgive me. This is probably like my sixth attempt at recording this. So I actually went and wrote a letter uh to myself, to anybody who's watching this, to kind of organize my thoughts. So first of all, let me put my glasses on because I'm blind. Um I'm 26. I officially at the moment identify as non-binary, trans-masculine. I started testosterone a little over a week ago, about a week and a half. And my mom actually initially suggested that I start recording my voice each week to kind of get a better feel for the changes. I've journaled for probably about 15 years consistently now. Last few years, I switched to an e-document so that I can, access it from anywhere. But as far as journaling goes, that's always helped me put things in pretty clear perspective, especially over the years, as things slip away and kind of blur together. So I thought maybe doing a video journal would be a really good way to put things in perspective, a year, 5 years from now. A little about me. I'm currently 25. I turned 26 in a few weeks. But I only mention that because I'm currently on my parents' insurance. But once I turn 26, I believe I have 3 to 4 weeks to get my own insurance. I'm very lucky that my parents have a federal Anthem insurance policy. So thus far, my healthcare has been pretty damn good. But I just got approved for Medicaid. So some of this, I'm sure, will be about the adventures in Medicaid and trying to get all my stuff straightened out. Now, one thing I did want to mention in these journals is that I'm Jewish. So that is going to play a role in my relationship to my transition and my parents' relationship to my transition and the way that my parents have raised me. And I know not everybody puts stock in religion, and honestly, I'm not super religious myself, but Judaism really affected my worldview in a way that I'm not sure other religions do, because Judaism is very much about the priority of the living. Your relationship to God is quite personal. There are ways to we have some prayers that can only be said in a group of at least 10 people with a rabbi. And then there's some that there's a more personal relationship with your body, with your spirit, with your relationship to every other living thing on the world. And that really helped me shape my personality and how I think about my relationship to my body. Now, unfortunately, there haven't been a lot of, as far as I've seen, outspoken trans voices. So I was hoping this could maybe be a little stepping stone, get some people, um, if not interested, at least aware of the different relationship. I know there's unfortunately quite a bit of stigma in the Orthodox community, but I know there's also, there's stigma in every religious community about a lot of gender and sexuality intersections. Um, Now, my story is, I think it's interesting, but that's because it's my story, right? I came out for real about maybe 3 months ago to my family. It wasn't the first time I came out. I initially came out to my parents when I was about 12 or 13 as liking girls, and it was very stressful because I had a crush on my best friend, and I needed to tell someone about it. And obviously, my confidant at the time was my mom because I was a lonely nerd, and my mom did a good job raising me, which means I wanted to tell her everything. And they were very supportive. That was not really a huge deal. But the gender stuff came a little bit later. When I was probably about 14, I bought my first binder off the internet, and it was just cotton and Velcro and didn't really do a lot as far as health and safety is concerned. But I liked how it made my profile look. I liked how it made me feel. Um, Even though I was buying it for cosplay, I wore it a lot when I was just alone in my room. But for whatever reason, I was terrified to wear it outside where anyone could see me. Now, over the years, I started to mess with gender presentation a little bit more, especially because for a long time I identified as a lesbian. Later, I started to identify as bisexual because I still had limited attraction to men, um, even now, my tastes are really specific. But I didn't learn about non binary identities until I was probably about 21. It really struck a chord with me. Um, but I still had a very complicated relationship with gender because to that point, womanhood had been very important to me. And I think it was mostly as a resistance act because I experienced a lot of, sexism, misogyny, and I was very defensive of my love for women, So I was just like, well, if other women are all these beautiful, wonderful things, maybe I can be that too, and maybe that's enough. Over the years, it's just kind of reinforced because I initially, my first career path was in the restaurant industry. I went to culinary school after high school. I had an internship and several years working in the restaurants, catering, hotel work, banquet work. And unfortunately, that industry is very male dominated. It's very aggressive. It requires a lot of physical labor and sacrifice of your time and energy. And unfortunately, most of the time I was the only woman in the kitchen. So I felt very much like I needed to represent women in a light that did not make us look weak or whatever, but it was very important that I was a woman in the kitchen, in the professional kitchen. Unfortunately, I think that set me back a few years because it was very isolating. It was very hard to be the only woman in the kitchen for a very long time. So once I got away from that a little bit, I started to realize that I didn't really feel like a woman. All these things that I had so lovingly defended for other women, I didn't necessarily feel myself. And so I struggled with this identity of, do I just hate myself? Do I have bad self-esteem? Am I being judgmental about other women based on my picture of myself? It's a lot of really complicated feelings that I think come from being attracted to women, well, not necessarily sure of your own identity. But, I made steps to try and feel more comfortable in my own body. I shaved my head for the first time. That was amazing. But then I got all this pressure to wear makeup so that people could still see that I'm a woman despite my baldness. I realized I didn't have to shave my legs or my armpits. That was the best thing I've ever done. I just realized that I don't necessarily have to conform to what's expected. Unfortunately, you're not free of it entirely no matter what you think. My jobs that rely on tips that I've had in the past, you get more tips when you wear makeup. It's a lot of little things that just add up to being very confusing when you're not sure how you want to present, how you feel about your body, how you feel about your gender identity. Now, when I was about 23, I officially, I'd been thinking about it for a long time, and I felt like non-binary worked for me. So, in a repeat of about a decade prior, I sat down with my mom, who was still one of my closest confidants. We'd talk about, everything. And I told her, hey, I might not be a woman. That was the best way I could think to phrase it. I didn't feel like a man, but I didn't feel like a woman. And I was just like, I don't know what I am, but I'll tell you now. And my mom, unfortunately, her first reaction was to instantly burst into tears. That was very, very disheartening. On the one hand, I understood her fear, which was that she would lose her relationship with her daughter entirely. We're both artists, we're both very emotional people. My mom and I both have bipolar disorder, so we've learned a lot about how to deal with these things while we're processing everything. She's one of my, I hesitate to call my mom my best friend, but we're very, very close. We've been great supports for each other over my whole life. Now that I'm an adult, I really treasure that relationship with my mom. And unfortunately, she seemed to feel like she was losing her child. And I didn't know how to convince her that, I'm still me. And forgive the tears, this is kind of emotional. But for the next few months, up into a couple years, whenever I tried to bring it up, she would get really quiet or start crying again, or it was a really bad reaction and honestly broke my trust for many things. But eventually, it just kept going like that, and I just stopped trying to correct her until it actually came once again. If it's not myself, it's in defense of other people, right? I had a friend who came out as non-binary with a different name, and I was talking about them with their new name, with their new pronouns. My mom just kind of burst out like, haha, they're always going to be a she, and their birth name to me. And I just flipped out. I went, I don't care if it's hard for you. This is my friend, and you're going to respect them. And that led to a whole, the only reason I let you call me by my birth name and she is that you freak out every time I try and tell you to do something else. And I think it kind of shocked her. I think she'd thought up to that point that maybe it was a phase or that it was something small, like a preference, not a need. And I think that kind of struck home that this was something really important to me that I'd just been letting her get away with. And I think she felt really bad about that. Now, it was really only this year that I took the possibility of transition very seriously. Up to this point, I'd kind of been waffling back and forth. Most of the time I feel fine. I can deal with it. I can deal with being ma'amed and sweethearted and, like treated like a woman, right? But it kind of came to a head when my grandmother, who is known for her very strong opinions about what women should do, sent me a long email imploring me to grow my hair out, to dress more feminine, wear makeup, and kind of tone it down because in the future, while I'm job hunting, I need to appeal to my potentially straight male employers. Those were her words. And I flipped out. I mean, I really freaked out. Because the idea of having to do all that was just so repulsive to me that I realized I finally really needed to do something about my looks, my voice, which I really hated, just everything. It was time. So my parents, luckily, are a lot more on board this time, I think because I'm insisting on it. And they're really trying. So they've joined PFLAG. They've joined a couple groups for the parents and families of transgender children and adults. And they're really trying, which is fantastic, But I still had some hurdles with the medical system. So luckily there's a Planned Parenthood clinic not too far, maybe an hour's drive south of me. And because of COVID, they've actually been doing telehealth appointments. And they have specifically, the great thing about Richmond is that they have a transgender health specialist group. So I was able to get appointments to do intake, and then a week later to start getting my prescription. And that part was pretty quick, but I still had to do blood work. I still had to see my general practitioner. And it was actually made quite a bit more complicated by the fact that I was undergoing diagnosis and treatment for endometriosis at this time. So, about a week before my intake appointment with Planned Parenthood, I had surgery to laser off any endometrial tissue and then get a shot of Lupron to kill any microscopic tissue. Now, the interesting thing about Lupron is that it can be used as a puberty blocker for trans men when they are younger. And that is because Lupron is an estrogen suppressant. But the complicated issue that came up was, can I be on Lupron and testosterone at the same time? Now, there were 3 scenarios that could have played out while they were doing some research. The first, best case, and what actually ended up happening, is that I can take Lupron, which is a shot that lasts for 3 months, and testosterone at the same time. And in fact, the lack of estrogen fighting the testosterone means that the testosterone will be more effective. So luckily that is what happened to me. But it was also possible that they would have told me that I could not take them together. Or there was the option that maybe I could take testosterone in place of Lupron, because testosterone can also act as an estrogen suppressant at times. Luckily, I'm able to take them at once, but just know that kind of complicated my process. Now, after a lot of rigmarole, I've got the endometriosis diagnosis. I'm navigating my insurance. The pharmacy itself fucked up at one point. But I finally started taking testosterone on the 13th of June 2020. So this was really only a week and a half ago. My mom, if you want proof of how far she's come in the last few months even, did my injection training with me, because she's been diabetic for almost 50 years. She knows her way around a needle, as far as that's weird to say. But she showed me how to do my injection training, and I'm off on a good foot. So, now we kind of come to this week, now that we're all caught up on my life story. So the first week I took T, I had a few changes. It actually happened a lot faster than I had been led to expect. Even though they were relatively small, they were noticeable to me. First of all, my skin almost immediately got a lot oilier, which is unfortunate, but I've been taking steps to improve my skincare regime, just to, get things under control before they get bad. I have a history of really bad acne when I was a teenager, and I didn't want to go back there. But oilier skin, my voice got a little bit rougher towards the end of the week, but not noticeable really to anyone else. Unfortunately, it sounded a little bit more like maybe I had allergies and I was catching a cold or something. But those were really the only big ones. My libido jumped up a little bit. Not huge changes. Now that I'm on week 2, oily skin, still a thing, especially, first 24 hours after my shot. Libido, still a thing. My voice has actually deepened quite a bit in the last few days. I kind of wish I'd had a recording of it prior to this, but I really wasn't comfortable recording my voice at that time, because though I've been told I don't have a particularly high voice for a woman anyway, when I go to customer service, it sounds like this. Hi, I'm Barbie. And it's just, it's embarrassing. So I don't have a lot of recordings of that. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, my story and what's going on. And I'm hoping to do another recording maybe every week or two to kind of track my progress with my voice, with the way things shift and my body fat. I'm intending to go and start exercising quite a bit more. I used to do that probably 4 to 5 times a week. I'd go to the gym before shutdown. And I'm going to be trying to do more stuff at home now, because unfortunately, one thing I've already noticed happening is some of my body fat is shifting to my gut, and that is not fun. So, gonna work on that. Now, hopefully the next videos won't be so long, because I won't be going over every detail of my life story, but I hope you all can get some comfort from knowing a little bit more about my process and my journey, for lack of a better word. So I'll see you all another time. Bye.